we think about this question of how long can a Christian go without sinning, really the first thing you have to do is define what we mean by sin, okay? And in fact, there are two aspects of sin, culpability and pollution. By culpability, we mean the objective sense of guilt. If you rob a bank, you are guilty or you are culpable of that crime. You have to do the time, right? If you rob a bank, then you have to go to jail for some amount of time, right? Like Romans 1:18 talks about the wrath of God. When it looks at sin, it's made this declaration of guilty and you will be punished. Pollution, on the other hand, like in Jeremiah 17:9, talks about the heart being corrupt, okay? And so this is that inner subjective sense of sin that takes place within people. So we have the objective sense, culpability, the subjective sense of pollution, all right? And justification is the part of salvation that takes care of culpability. Sanctification takes care of pollution. And justification is that one-time declaration of God at salvation that he sees you as the righteousness of Christ, because Christ took your sin on the cross. And so God now looks at you with the righteousness of Christ. That's how he sees you. But in another sense, also that pollution aspect, which is being taken care of over time through sanctification, is still taking place inside of us. So in one sense, we can never sin the way that God looks at us. But in the other sense, since that pollution is always at work inside of us, well, probably we can't go even 5 minutes without sinning, right? Because that is a condition of our hearts that is becoming more holy. John Wesley might say that there can become a time when we are, in a sense, not sinning. We're loving God and loving people, not that we don't have errors, but that we have reached some sort of condition of sinlessness. Okay, so there's a great quote by Luther here. So in this quote by Martin Luther, we see a couple things at play here. This is from Luther's commentary on Romans. So check out what he says here. For inasmuch as the saints are always aware of their sin, and this talks about the pollution, and implore God for the merciful gift of his righteousness, they are for this very reason always reckoned righteous by God. This has to do with that culpability issue. Therefore, they are before themselves and in truth unrighteous, right? This is, again, this pollution issue, because as you look inside of you, you do see sins that are being taken away through sanctification. But before God, they are righteous because he reckons them so on account of their confessions. And so again, this is that culpability issue. They are sinners in fact, okay? They are sinners in fact. Again, this is part of this pollution issue. But by virtue of the reckoning of a merciful God, are righteous. And again, this is sort of that culpability issue. So you see at play in here, there are issues of pollution that are happening within the Christian. And that is when you look at yourself, you do see sin. But there's also issues of culpability that... So when we think about this question of, can I go without sinning? One of the problems with that is that you are looking at yourself, right? And it's sort of like humility. The minute you think that you have reached a level of humility, it's probably proof that you have not reached that humility, right? Because, okay, I'm going to be humble. You start feeling like, all right, I've reached this level of humility. I'm really proud of my humility. Poof, it's gone. And I think it's a similar way with this idea of sin, right? The more you focus on yourself, the bigger problem you're going to be in. This is why I would love, as we think about this, how does Scripture talk about this? In Colossians 3:5, it says, put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil, desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming. In these you too once walked when you were living in them. But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices, and have put on the new self with being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator. So, part of what Paul is talking about here is the idea of in your pollution, these things are still going to be attacking you. That's why he has to put this imperative, put those away, stop doing this, because this is an ongoing process. But when we see the condition for how this is done, we see that there actually is a way of overcoming these things, or at least stepping towards becoming more of an overcomer of these things. Because previously in this chapter, in the verses before, he said this: "If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on the things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God." And so as you think about this idea of how do we move forward in our sanctification, what do we do with our justification, I think it is this reminder constantly that we have been justified. The way God sees you is that you are the righteousness of Christ, and we need to continually remind ourselves of this. And also in this idea of sanctification, we need to get our eyes off of ourselves and onto Jesus Christ. You always end up where you're aimed at, right? If you're looking at a certain goal, this is where you're going to head, right? But if you're looking at something, trying to go somewhere else, it's never going to work. And so we need to remember in this question of can I not sin? I don't know, but I know that there is one who is sinless. And I need to remember to always look towards him. Am I sinning? I don't know, maybe not. I don't know, right? But I know that there is one who is sinless, and that's where my attention needs to go. So that's an answer. I don't know if that's a clear-cut answer, but it is some thoughts that lead towards an answer. Thanks for watching.